As many of you know from watching my video recreation of the incident, I was recently confronted by a street preacher while walking my dogs at the Seal Beach Pier. In the midst of our dialogue, my street preacher friend told me that God wanted me to have faith. My first thought, almost always when it comes to assertions made by religious folks, is, how do you know? Really, how does anyone know what God wants? Of course, people will reference their holy books, often pointing specifically to chapter and verse. But that only tells us what some other person living thousands of years ago said about what God wants. Or does it even do that? Do we even know that the person to whom such writings are attributed even existed, let alone wrote or said the things they're said to have written or said? Even if we could establish the existence of this person and somehow determine that they did in fact say or write the things that they are claimed to have said or written, there's no way we can actually know that what they said or wrote accurately represents some genuine communication from God. They may have honestly believed they were communicating with God and accurately relaying God's message, but were they? How would we know? Perhaps this person was having a psychotic episode. Perhaps the person had some neurological condition which routinely simulated encounters with the divine but were anything but. Perhaps this person had ingested something which caused dreams or hallucinations which they mistook for the voice of God. Perhaps the person was simply a charlatan using such claims to acquire status or power. Or perhaps one of the adversary's dark angels had tricked this person into believing he was communicating with some divine presence. Beyond our ability to credibly establish that faith is indeed what God wants us to have, the question is, why? Why would God want or need us to have faith? I understand why other people would want or need us to have faith. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. But God, He already knows our hearts, and He knows exactly what we're going to do. He is also never without the ability to demonstrate His presence or power or tell us Himself what exactly He wants from us. Why put us in a position where faith is even necessary? Nor is putting us in such a position part of God's modus operandi. The God of the Bible is never hesitant to demonstrate His presence or power. He destroys cities, nations, the planet, and all life thereon. He brings plagues, famine, the death of the firstborns. He holds the sun in the sky, has bears do His dirty work. He even turns a great fish into a cozy dwelling. Take that, HGTV. When He incarnates in Act 2, He raises the dead, heals the sick, miraculously feeds the multitudes, and conquers death. God has never been shy. He's always put on one hell of a show so that people knew He was the real deal. Why not do that now? Does He really have some irrational fear of fact-checkers? But then we're also confronted with the fact that faith itself is value neutral. Without a reliable methodology for determining which beliefs, institutions, or people in which we should have faith, we are leaving ourselves open to any huckster hell-bent on taking advantage, pun intended. We can listen to Mr. Smith and his theology, and then we can listen to Mr. Muhammad offer his, but how do we determine which to follow? Or perhaps we're to see that neither is worthy? Anyone can claim communication with the divine. If there is something specific in which God wants us to have faith, then clearly faith alone is not enough, or even minimally sufficient. Then there's the fact that if God really wants me to have something, why didn't He just create me having the thing that He wants me to have? In fact, if God wants me to have faith, how is it that I am thwarting the will of this all-powerful being? We don't in any meaningful way get to choose whether or not we'll be a person capable of such a thing as faith. I don't get to choose whether I'll believe something or not. I either do or I don't. If I'm born with a skeptical brain, I'm not likely to have faith in anything, let alone millennia-old stories that are full of holes. Why curse me so? He does it for some, why not for me? I am, after all, as He created me. Did He just need another angel to torture for all eternity? If faith, or a lack thereof, will determine my future for all time, the difference being either a future of absolute bliss or eternal torment, then what God must want for me is to have faith in the exact right thing. But as the various world religions demonstrate, there is absolutely no way for us to make that call. The vast majority of us are clearly doomed. Even if one were to argue that God has left us an instruction manual in the form of His holy word, we are still left to ask which holy word or interpretation thereof does God want us to embrace. After all this, I'm left to wonder why I would even want to have faith in a being who would leave us in such a precarious spot. Would you leave the future of your children dangling in such a way when so much is at stake? Of course not. Doesn't this seem rather like something called for by someone who wants or needs you to believe something for their benefit instead of yours? If not, I need you to know that there is nothing on the planet which will secure your seat in heaven like a $50 per video commitment at my Patreon page. Did I say 50? Whoops, I messed that up. I meant 5,000. I meant 5,000. Yes, 5,000 per video. Yeah, that's the ticket. See the links in the description below.